Welcome back to the Life Well Led podcast. Eric, you know, the last week of my life has been dedicated to studying for this exam coming up.
Yep.
And this morning I was watching some prep videos and they spent about 15 minutes talking about self-talk and how important it is to the success of the test. And I just thought that
Yeah.
was fascinating because as coaches, we talk about self-talk all the time.
All the time. It's part of what we were trained to do as far as our program, and sure enough, probably many programs, as your self-talk is where you are as an individual.
I also heard recently that some people don't have self-talk. They don't have that little voice inside their head that's narrating or telling things to them all day long. And
Really?
I don't know. If you're one of those people, please let us know because
Yeah, right.
I can't make the little people stop inside my head.
No, me
So
neither. And that's
I can't imagine. But really, I want to talk about the power of self-talk today. I think it's really, really interesting understanding what it is, the power of positive self-talk, the consequences of negative self-talk, and then ways that you can improve your self-talk and really use that voice inside your head as a benefit to really propel you forward throughout your life.
sounds good. Let's hop on into it.
All right, so let's talk about kind of understanding both sides. There's positive self-talk and negative self-talk. So Eric, what does positive self-talk look like?
Positive self-talk might be something that you're not used to. I know for me it wasn't, but positive self-talk is affirmations. Positive self-talk is looking on the optimism, at glasses half full side of things. It's looking for possibilities and opportunities for things to move forward, not necessarily blaming or self-doubt. It is very much a driver in success, as we've alluded to, right? So positive self-talk is about lifting yourself up and continually promoting positive affirmations about yourself and what's going on around you.
Yeah. And there's so many professional athletes out there that use this form of self-talk to really help propel them forward in their athletic careers. You think of like Serena Williams and LeBron James, who are using these mental skills.
Brooks Koepka did something similar where in a golf magazine, I think 3 times out of the 10 skills, he said, I don't think of anything. That's not necessarily saying that's not self-talk, but that is saying I am not letting the negative self-talk influence what I'm doing. So you can have positive affirmations to lift yourself up. You can have a positive outlook on those things, and it leads to a better performance. That's really the key there, is that when you have a positive self-talk, even in the face of adversity, you have the ability to then feel better, which then gives you the better advantage in your performance of what you're doing, whether it's an athlete, whether it's at your job, whether it's your whatever, you're a performer, you could be a musician. It's all of that is a performance. So that is the key advantage to a positive self-talk. It's not just for everyday life. It's about how you perform each and every day, and it gives you a competitive advantage.
And this goes back millions of years, right? Like, think about even culturally in religion and some of these things where people are using proverbs and emphasis on specific words and thoughts, and how this is integrated so deeply into our culture that these positive affirmations, the science of mantra out there, these repeating things positively back to ourselves and how we have so much control. There's a lot of science around how those positive things really do connect with our brain and we're able to make things happen.
Having the ability to do that, though, is not necessarily how we're hardwired. We actually have to promote self-talk in a positive way, which kind of leads to what negative self-talk is.
I think it's fascinating. The studies show that 70% of our energy is spent on negative self-talk. Isn't that crazy?
I mean, I believe it because it's rooted in, if you think about it, and I've talked to actually my therapist at the time had mentioned it, and it's been repeated throughout the internet, is, your negative self-talk is supposed to be your brain's mechanism of keeping you safe, right? You're being chased by a bear. You're being chased by some large, dangerous animal. And that part of your brain, the primitive part of your brain, the caveman part of your brain, is keeping you safe. But in the modern world, we haven't fully evolved beyond that. That part of our brain is still there, but it's not necessarily propelling us forward because that danger isn't necessarily always going to be that immediate.
Right.
So, having the ability to promote self talk in a positive way is a reversal of what's already hardwired into us.
Yeah. So we are hardwired to have this defense mechanism that leads to stress,
Mm hmm.
leads to decreased motivation,
Mm hmm.
and really a lot of mental health issues. And that's where we are right now in society, where we're seeing a massive increase in mental health issues. And there's a lot of negativity around us. You turn on the news, there's negativity. You go on social media, depending on who you're following, can be a really negative space for
Right.
people. People are finding less and less happiness in their work and what they do in their physical bodies. And so all around us, we're getting these negativities and we're being fed negative thoughts by our brain constantly. We're not good enough. We don't deserve it. There's someone out there better than us. So much imposter syndrome,
Mm hmm.
so much comparison,
Mm hmm.
right? We're constantly, social media constantly comparing our lives to other people who are showing things on the internet. And so, of course, there's going to be a lot of negative self talk, but 70% of our energy spent on that.
Again, not surprising, but it's also something you have to be aware of. If it's really taking up that much of your life and you don't feel like you have a strong positive self talk, that is an area of improvement you can work on. Because if we're hardwired to do it and the surrounding culture is about negativity,
Mhm.
that's why I don't watch the news. I'll
Yeah.
be honest with you. Some people don't watch the news. I'm one of them. I can't do it because it's surrounded by negativity. That's one of those things where I have to not just promote self talk in a positive space, but also understanding the environment around me. And it's sort of like you are what you eat. It is who you surround yourself with ultimately affects how you think, how you feel, and how you act. And this is
Yeah.
no different. If you're surrounded by negative people, you tend to take on the culture of the room or the culture of that organization or the culture of that particular community. So be conscious of who you surround yourself with because even though our brains are hardwired to think that way, there are ways to change it. You can mitigate that. And it starts with you, but it also starts with who you surround yourself with.
You mentioned something really interesting, Eric,
What's
and
that?
you know, the energy, the closest people to you, you kind of mimic their energy. And you've probably heard this. You are like the five closest people that you associate with.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You can feel the energy when you walk into a room. You
Right.
can feel how people treat you. It's interesting because you do a lot of networking events
Mm.
and you've come home and you've been like, that sucked.
Hmm.
Those people were not my people. That was not the energy that I want to be around. And then there's other events where you'll come home and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I met this person and this person and this person. And the energy in the room is just different and you can feel it.
I know that's true, and because we talk about it all the time, but there's one group that I go to, and one of their requirements to be in there is a positive self-talk affirmation in and of itself. It says,
Interesting.
quote, view yourself as a success in your own eyes. Be a success in your own eyes is the exact phrase. I think that's fascinating because that is, I never really realized that until now, but that is a self-talk affirmation to walk into the room and say, I am successful. I am good at what I do. I am good enough. That's huge because then that sets the tone for the rest of the room where people are genuinely there to help others and put their foot forward first to help somebody else before receiving anything in return or even expecting anything in return. That's what's so great about that particular group. And so, yeah, having that kind of self awareness and awareness of the group around you to set that parameter for yourself or set up that yourself for success, ironically enough, that's key. It really, really is. And I hope to emulate that in everything that I do as well.
You said the word awareness. We've mentioned it 2, 3 times now throughout
Hmm.
this. And I think kind of when you start to think about some of the strategies to improve this self talk, sometimes it's really hard to even realize that it is negative self talk. When you walk by the mirror, you don't just go, ugh. Or when you're thinking about, you know, how you did at work, that you're not criticizing yourself. There's a lot of opportunities in the millions of thoughts that we have each day to have that negative self talk reverberated back to us. And so when you think about awareness in terms of your thoughts, what is a tool that people could actually use in order to be more aware of their thoughts?
Let me I always say, let me caveat this, but let me caveat it by saying that it's hard to do if you don't realize it and you don't have a need for it. But the more self-aware that you are, the better you are at doing it. For me personally, it became a mental health struggle. So realizing that even though it's self-conscious, inside your brain, and it's just automatic for you, you just do it. And you don't realize that you're saying those negative things because you don't feel the immediate consequences of it. It's a snowball effect. It's a compounding
Yeah.
thing that actually makes it worse. So keep that in mind, that it may not affect you today, but that continually will affect you tomorrow. A tool, not the tool, but a tool to consider doing that is, I mean, what if you say something negative, automatically it's not going to change overnight. But to say the word but, how about, but I did well? Changing the end of the sentence from a period to a comma, but, and then putting something that you can actually do better next time. What is the opportunity for you to improve upon that situation that you will not necessarily feel as bad as you did? And you'll actually give yourself an opportunity to take on a challenge and grow.
Yeah. So that's that butt exercise again. That
Yeah.
that I had a really crappy day, but I'm
But
really glad I got the chance to talk to Eric about blah blah blah.
right. Another tool is one that we as coaches use, and it's named different things, but basically it's the idea of playing cognitive behavioral work. And that's ultimately what the butt game is, but this is a little different. This is kind of saying, what am I thinking right now? What is the actual fact of what's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
The scale is X number. Okay, so what is your thought? I'm overweight. How does it make you feel? Terrible. What is the ending result? It ruins my day. Okay, well, what would be a more believable thought that you could go into and use?
The fact is the same.
The fact is
The
the same.
the number on the scale is neutral. It has no emotion to it. We tie the emotion to that number.
I will make progress on this going forward, or I have made progress on it because that
Yeah.
number is less than it was a week ago. Okay, how does that make you feel? Makes me feel
Right.
better. What does that lead you to do? Have a better day. All right. That's just one example. You could apply that to performance at work. You can apply that to just about anything.
Yeah.
But it's taking a reframe of how you think is how you feel is how you act.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think even a more simpler tool, really kind of giving you a whole tool chest here,
Yeah.
journaling. I use this tool called brain dumping every single morning where I wake up and sometimes I wake up with anxiety or thoughts about the day and I just need to get them all out on paper. And I'll just write for 5 minutes just till my
Mm-hmm.
brain feels completely empty. And then I start focusing on here's how I want my day to be. Here's how I'm feeling about this. Here's my affirmation. So I'm getting all of the stressful things out of my brain. They just no longer exist there because I put them on paper and I can forget them.
Remember, your brain is kind of like a junk drawer sometimes.
Yeah.
You have a collection of thoughts that are already there, and then the outside world that influences it creates more of a junk drawer. If you don't get it out there and it's full of stuff like rubber
Yeah.
bands and pencils and
Where did I leave my keys last night?
keys, how about
I can't believe I said that to Sue yesterday.
your electric tester for your plugs ends up being something like, am I going to get fired for saying that tomorrow? But dumping it all out there gives you space in your brain, some room to breathe. You haven't hit that, capacity overload. You're able to then bring the equilibrium down so that way you're able to process more and be able to then replace some of those negative thoughts with something positive. And that gives you motivation and drive to continue to work towards being better every day.
Yeah. So that was reframing tools, the brain dumping, just figuring out what your brain is even thinking
Mm-hmm.
consciously, getting those out there. Obviously, people use meditation and things like that, although it is really hard to silence the brain if you're not used to that. And I know there's some meditation specialists out there who have some great tips on that. One of the tools that we use, though, as coaches, once you kind of get to a point where you want to be aware of where you are in your thoughts. There's one more tool that Eric and I have in our tool chest as coaches. And we are both certified in the Energy Leadership Index assessment. So, Eric, I will let you kind of give the background on what that is.
So the Energy Leadership Index is a similar assessment. You know, you may have heard of Myers-Briggs or DISC or Hogan Predictive Index. Energy Leadership Index assessment is unlike them in the sense that it's attitudinal. Long and the short of it is that it's measuring your thoughts, feelings, and actions, the thoughts, feelings, actions model, on the ability to take certain scenarios and get an idea of whether you strongly agree with them, strongly disagree with them, and everything in between. It's an exercise in self awareness. Those questions really make you think about how you view the world. And how you view the world ends up showing up in the test results as at that time you were this much self-aware in this part of your emotional intelligence, and it ranges on certain levels of energy. It is a really great tool for self-awareness and emotional intelligence, and it's based on very strongly what your self-talk is like, certain things, and how you feel and how you act as a result of that.
I'm a personality test junkie. Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, the color thing. I don't even know. All those tests. I love them all. This one is interesting because it's not based on your personality. It's based on your attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And your attitude can change and shift over time, especially as you're working towards different things. So if you're putting a lot of work into your mindset and trying to change things, looking for the opportunity, you're going to start to see those shifts. So if you take it right now, what it looks like maybe in December is going to be different. And you can really start to track that progress. The first time I took the test, I was mad. I was frustrated at the results, but it all made perfect sense to me. It really was extremely accurate. And then I took it again about 8 months later, and there was a massive increase because I had been working on and going through a coaching program where I was being coached multiple times a week for hours and hours and hours, and coaching multiple times a week. And it just starts to reframe and train your brain in a different way. So, of course, things are going to shift. And so it's really interesting because you can go back and kind of compare where you were to where you are now, unlike Myers-Briggs, which most likely you're not going to change from an introvert to an extrovert.
Yeah, and that's really the benefit of this kind of assessment, is being able to see where you are and where you're going. So as if you can choose your actions, you can choose how you think. And
Yeah.
it's no different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Eric, you kind of hit the nail on the head with that. Whether we're talking about coaching, whether we're talking about positive self-talk, negative self-talk, awareness of it is so key. And you have the choice. The choice is powerful.
Mm-hmm.
To know and to be aware, consciously aware that you have the choice of how you want to show up. That's why this works. That's why positive affirmations, that's why positive self-talk works. And when you can override the negative in your head and turn it into a positive, it's a game changer.
Listen, hand up, I didn't believe it was possible years ago. I thought I was a victim to my own self and that I could never change that. You know, psychology says otherwise, and so does part of coaching, which is rooted in psychology and adult learning and neurolinguistic programming, et cetera, et cetera. But good work, self-work, does work, because now in the situations where I would have that self-doubt and fear, it's now replaced by a different way of thinking of what's the opportunity, or asking more positive questions that are open-ended and allow me to think on the brighter side of things.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, if I can do it, it's possible for just about anybody.
And so I think it's important to just leave you with this last thought. You are in charge of your thoughts at any given point, and you can choose to change your thoughts at any point. So instead of beating up on yourself and thinking that you could do better, or that you're not good enough, or that this isn't for you, you can choose to make it for you, to say that you are in the right place at the right time, that you have everything you need to accomplish everything that you want to accomplish, and that you not only are good enough, but you deserve it.